Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth edition of our REIMAGINE 2020 virtual conference series brought to you by MouseBelt Blockchain Accelerator and Multi.io. I'm your co-host, Ashlie Meredith, and today we're bringing you our end-of-year special Happy Hodl Days. Today, we're happy to have Charles Bovaird here with us. He's a financial writer and editor and currently the VP of Content over at Quantum Economics. Hello, Charles. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. And yourself?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. So as we were discussing before this recording, I'm the head of education over at MouseBelt, and we have a robust university program. So we've got students tuning in from all over the world, and I wanted to kind of ask you just how did you get started as a writer? Speaking directly, to our student audience who might be thinking about what they want to do in their career and whether what they're studying now can be applied into the blockchain space. How did you get started as a writer? And then what was your entry point into the blockchain crypto space?
Oh, you got it. So I started writing, how should I put this, of my own free will and accord when I was a sophomore in high school. And what I mean by of my own free will and accord is I started writing things myself without a teacher giving me an assignment. The first thing I ever wrote of, like I said, of my own free will and accord was a piece about the school system, actually. And I got it accepted for publication in one form or another in 6 different places. And this was when I was about 16 or 17 years old. And yeah, and after that, I actually wrote quite a bit in high school. I got published about 15 times. I wrote different policy analysis pieces. I'm not necessarily going to claim that they were works of art because I was a teenager, but that's okay. And past that, I've been a financial writer since about 2011, or should I say I have been employed basically, as an employee or as a contractor, writing about finance since 2011. And in 2016, I started writing a weekly column for CoinDesk. It's called Markets Weekly. Pete Rizzo at the time was the editor of CoinDesk, and he is a person who I knew and had worked with in the past. And long story short, this was right around the time that CoinDesk got bought out by Digital Currency Group. And so basically I was contacted and Pete asked me if I wanted to write a weekly column for him. And so I said, absolutely. So I started writing the weekly column. It seemed to get a great response. And then I started writing more and more articles for CoinDesk. And then about a year and a half later, I started writing for Forbes, and I've been writing for Forbes ever since. That was in July 2017 when I first started writing for them.
And with Forbes, are they kind of looking to you to specifically write about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, or do you write about other things as well?
I specifically got hired to write by Forbes Crypto. Mm-hmm. Although I have written about other things. I mean, I've written pieces about gold specifically, and also I've written some pieces that involved crypto as well as other asset classes. Like I've probably written maybe 3 or 4 articles about that involved Bitcoin and also the S&P 500 index, and compared the price, the movements of the two to see how much of a correlation there was. And it looked at it. These pieces will look at both the S&P 500 index and the price of Bitcoin over different periods of time to see, when there was a correlation between the two. And I've also written pieces that involve Bitcoin and gold, which is not terribly surprising since many people have described Bitcoin as digital gold.
Absolutely. So you said you got started in writing financial writing in 2011, pretty soon after, Bitcoin was created. What inspired you to start writing about finance, and how soon after that did you start getting interested in crypto?
Well, a lot of what inspired me to write about finance is I wanted to work in finance anyways, and writing was something I could do. I've been published. I seem to have a knack for it. I've been published a bunch of times, and I knew there were people who wrote about the financial markets, and there are people who write news, and there are people who wrote, there's people who write news, there's people who develop educational content, and that's only for stuff that ends up, on websites facing the entire world. There are all kinds of other different materials that a financial writer could develop. They could develop, like case studies that a company might use in its business development efforts, for example. And the other part of your question is, when did I take an interest in crypto?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, I first heard of crypto in 2013, I believe, because, or at least the first time I remember it turning up in Bloomberg, it was because I believe the Winklevoss twins filed for a Bitcoin ETF around that time. So that was the first time I heard about it. But the first time I actually started writing about it regularly was early 2016, and I had started doing some research on the subject before that.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. I love how you said that, you know, you saw an industry that you wanted to work in and you thought, well, I'm good at this. I'm good at writing. I've received some success in it in the past, so I will take my skill and use that to get into this industry. I think it's great advice for our students who might be interested in making a career for themselves in blockchain, is to look at what you're good at and continue to hone those skills. But then you can kind of add on that domain expertise by educating yourself on blockchain and kind of incorporating that into the skills that you already have. So for any students tuning in who may, you know, think that they are a good writer and wants to get into writing about blockchain, any advice or first steps or things that you think they should focus on?
Well, if you don't have a portfolio, it could be it could be helpful to build up a portfolio. I mean, of course, it helps if you know, obviously enough, it helps if you know people in the industry who can help you get started in the right place. Not that simply knowing something is going to be the end all be all, but it won't hurt. It could help you get the opportunity. Other than that, I mean, you could build up a portfolio of publications in different places. It really depends on what your goal is. I mean, what you want to do. Like a person might want to be a full-time journalist. A person might want to be, for example, a writer for a financial services firm, working within their marketing department, for example. So I think it helps for them to have an idea of what exactly they want to do and then figure out how they're going to get there.
Yeah, you and I are probably similar as far as being people who spend a lot of time writing, went to school for philosophy. Have you ever read the book, The War of Art?
I don't believe I have. I've absolutely heard that name though.
Yeah, I think it's just the best kick in the pants kind of book about, you know, you're a writer if you write, right? And that's the only requirement. As long as you are writing, you're a writer. So yeah, definitely building up that portfolio. If you don't have anything, if you come to like a blockchain protocol who might need, you know, a community manager or people writing their blogs and stuff, and you're like, I'm a writer, and they're like, okay, let me see what you've written, and you don't have anything to show, it's because you're not writing. So he definitely is just very much about resistance and how you just have to do the thing.
Okay.
You just have to sit down and write a little bit. It doesn't even have to be every day, but you've got to actually write to call yourself a writer. So that's kind of always in the back of my mind. And I have like a weekly writing practice because I cannot commit to a daily one. But so yeah, the great advice for our students. Speaking of, getting into a writing practice, building a portfolio, learning about these different things so that you can speak on them. You have experience as well creating kind of educational modules for financial literacy. You've helped companies of 300 plus employees have, trainings to help kind of get everybody up to speed. So as a fellow like educator or someone creating content that's intended to educate people, what do you see as far as financial literacy of the general public or even people who are in finance? What's missing? What could maybe students or universities really benefit their students by including in curriculum?
Well, I mean, does it have to be universities? Could it be like high schools and other like public schools that people go to? Could I address that or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So, I feel like a lot of people, some people have brought this up to me. People I've worked with, one person I worked with, he said that a lot of people don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know how to balance a checkbook. School doesn't teach them how to do so. Like you might go to high school and high school will tell you about, you know, what this dynasty did in the 800 AD, but you may not necessarily use that. Whereas they don't teach you basic things like how to use a checkbook. Here's a credit card. Here's a student loan. How does a student loan work? I mean, even some of the most basic things, like student loans, and then if you work at a place, the Aflac people might come in and they might start trying to like basically manipulate you into buying their products, you know, because I mean, I remember like there are times that I ran into the Aflac people and I just told everybody, I'm like, okay, well, I can tell you the following things because I know the following things. I'm like, if you really want to know what your student loan company says, get it in writing. Get it in writing from the student loan company, not the Aflac person. The Aflac person does not, you know, service your student loan. And then, I mean, get it in writing. And I'm like, if you really want to know for sure whether or not, you know what your responsibilities are going to be, you could always talk to a lawyer. I mean, lawyers give free consultations and stuff like that. But I mean, it would be great if universities taught even basic things like that many people need simply as a part of life. Like if you ever have a checking account, it's helpful to know how to balance a checkbook. If you ever have a credit card, once again, it's helpful to know how a credit card works or a bank card, like, you know, what type of annual percentage rate is it paying you? So basic things like that. I mean, and once you get past that, it might be helpful for schools to teach people the basics of things like stocks and bonds. Although
Absolutely. I never learned anything about stocks and bonds in high school.
Okay, me either. I learned in college. I had to, yeah, I mean, I had one course in particular, financial economics. And I had a real character of a teacher. So he made it interesting. Maybe I'll take this recording and I'll send it to him.
Nice shout out. So what kind of stuff, what kind of educational modules were you creating for these companies that to get their employees up to speed on financial literacy?
Well, I mean, part of it started off as just market coverage. Like I work, it's okay. So there's times when, for example, like web content is huge. It's, you know, there's times when it's you know, it's a big market. It's a way that companies can make money. So they might bring a bunch of people who just graduated from college and hire them. So these might be, say, like 22, 23, 24-year-old kids, or maybe I should say young adults, recent college graduates, who they may be excellent writers, but they may not necessarily know much about the financial markets. And they may be brought on because, I mean, the company, they're looking for a job as a writer, and the company is looking to hire people specifically to write about the financial markets. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to be like a senior financial analyst at JP Morgan Chase to do this. So I started off creating training modules that involved market coverage. So basically, I tell people things like, okay, so one of the most basic things I feel like is, so let's say you have a trading session, like with the stock market. You know, it opens at say 9:30 in the morning, it closes at 4. Now, at the end of the day, the S&P 500 index, for example, is either up, it's down, or it's largely flat. Now, after the fact, what we have is all these people who provide explanations as to why that happened. Now, if you listen to 3 different people provide explanations, you may get 3 different responses. You know, you may get 2 different responses. I mean, of course, there are times when, you know, for example, something happens and the stock market goes down significantly. And so everybody points to that one event as helping us drive the stock market down significantly. But I went over things like that, and, you know, basically also like random walk theory, the idea that, you know, the movements in the global asset markets are based around the release of news, and the release of news is random. So therefore, the movements in the global asset markets are random. Yeah, that's, yeah. So I start off with that, and I also work for Moody's Analytics. And so for them, I did maybe a little bit more sophisticated stuff. But I remember the first thing I ever did for them, it was some sort of like derivatives trading strategy module. So it was like a bit more complicated, but if memory, I mean, from what I remember, it wasn't terribly complicated. It's not like the sort of thing that I would give to, it's like, it's not like if I were a senior derivatives trader and had been trading derivatives for the last 10 years and I said, this is the most complicated thing I've ever done. It's not, and like, let me write an article about it. It wasn't like that. It was more basic derivatives trading strategy. So
that's great. Yeah. So you're taking your experience and helping others, learn how to write and talk about these markets. Speaking of which, currently you are the VP of content at Quantum Economics, and their goal is to help people get a better understanding of why markets move, what's influencing them, and of course, more importantly, how to get ahead of markets. So they provide analysis, advisory, and money management, and you're the VP of content. So what is their content strategy?
What is their content strategy? Now, usually when I think of content strategy, that makes me think of how you use content in order to get business. I mean, I'm not really sure that's the best question for me to answer. I mean, maybe I should go through like what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, sure. Just what is their, obviously one of the best ways to help people understand markets would probably be to provide some content for them to read. So,
Yep.
how are they creating that content? How are they distributing it? What is your role there? What does your day look like?
Sure. Okay. So we have a couple different types of content. We have research pieces which are put together by our analysts. And basically the analysts have different areas of expertise, different things that they're interested in. And so they'll put together research reports and they will publish them on the Quantum Economics website. Well, actually, no, they'll publish them on they'll publish them on Medium. And then sometimes the Medium posts that we have will get picked up and covered by different media outlets. So that's how I put our information out there. And we also have content that we develop for clients, in which case it's on a purely custom basis, what they want us to do for them. Like it could be like a newsletter or a white paper or a case study, whatever they would like us to do. As far as my day-to-day, I seem to spend a fair amount of time editing newsletters, editing stuff for clients, editing research reports that we're doing. I also hire people. I evaluate, different applicants, and I have meetings with clients. I do things like that.
Yeah, lots of writing and editing.
Yes, that sort of thing. Yes.
Yeah, so that totally makes sense. So they have a client who comes to them and says, I want to better understand this particular market. Here's my goals. Here's what I want you to focus on. And your team of analysts will come back with a report, and you assist in editing and making sure everything's tip top.
Yes, absolutely. I also set editorial. I also am in charge of things like, editorial policy. Yeah, so I'm the one who basically says, okay, this is the house style we're going to use. And then once that I've determined the house style, I do my best to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Oxford commas or no Oxford commas?
We give people the ability to use them if they would like. I have no objection to Oxford commas.
That was just the first kind of like thing I could think of that you might have like a hard and fast rule about in a style guide or something.
Nope. I see no reason to. I mean, I think they're helpful. I never had any objection to the Oxford comma. I'm used to writing for places. For the most part, a lot of the places I've written for just don't use the Oxford comma. And so like a lot of times it doesn't matter what I want. They have a house style, I follow it. That's pretty much it. Because other than that, if I write all these articles, I'm just going to get them back with little red marks that say get rid of that until the editor tells me to just not include those anymore.
Yeah.
That was like a lot of points. So now I just tell people if they would like to use Oxford commas, that's perfectly fine.
Awesome.
Yep.
So you do a lot of writing as well for Forbes. I was just kind of briefly looking over your last publications, and it seems like almost weekly or bi-weekly or even more than weekly, with Bitcoin going up and up and up the last month or two. You're constantly putting out kind of analysis on where the movement is and why, even maybe suggesting in a headline that Bitcoin was struggling at 14K as the world was uncertain about the US elections. So thought maybe for anybody tuning in who hasn't had a chance to really read up on all of the movement, maybe is just excited that the price is going up. Any trends that you're seeing or reasons why that's happening or reasons why it struggled at certain points, kind of maybe just over the last month or two?
Okay, sure. So if I say that it struggled at any point, I mean, really what that means is just hitting resistance. Like there are people who are selling at that level, probably because, it's gone from less than $3,900 this year in March on CoinDesk up to, like I might have said it struggled at say like 14,000 or 16,000 or right around there. I mean, you can see why people would take profits, after something is, tripled in value. Yeah. And I would say a lot of the biggest trends that I keep hearing about are just people make it sound like this bull run is different from the bull run we had in 2017, 2018. The bull run we had in 2017, I think it was largely driven by retail investors and kind of like irrational exuberance, or maybe I shouldn't put it that way, but really very strong enthusiasm, to the point where like that very strong enthusiasm kind of overcame maybe people's more skeptical side. Whereas this time around, I feel like the bull run is being largely driven by institutional investors. I think institutional investors are more in the habit of doing their own research. I mean, the thing is, like, the markets are going up, but if you look at the Google Trends data for example, the term Bitcoin, it's not as high as it was at some points. Like, it hasn't gotten back to that all-time high. So it's not like, and I also don't see articles, a never-ending supply of articles that say if you've invested this much in Bitcoin in say 2012, you'd be a millionaire. And I don't see videos online where there's a celebrity who's like doing, walking around and they ask him, should I buy Bitcoin? And the person's like,
Yeah. So maybe I think I've seen the same kind of sentiment, whether on crypto Twitter or some of the, Telegram or Facebook groups that I'm in, which is that this is different than 2017.
Yep.
One thing that maybe people are seeing is that the price is going up just as quickly, but the hype is very low. We're not seeing a ton of conversation about this in maybe even traditional media. Is that what you're seeing too? Could you explain that a bit more for us? Is that just the difference because we think that maybe it's more institutional investors in this bull run than in retail investors in 2017?
Yes, you mentioned hype, and so by hype, do you mean people promoting it?
I mean, yeah, I guess I mean just buzz, like people like CNN talking about it.
I
Maybe
mean,
more traditional media having buzz around it.
I saw a chart. Actually, this was included in the latest quantum economics newsletter, which basically showed that it showed the correlation between Bloomberg coverage of the price of Bitcoin. It showed the correlation between Bitcoin's price and the coverage of the digital currency. And it showed that basically there's not as much coverage this time around. But I mean, the thing is, I mean, there's still articles out there about Bitcoin. It's just maybe there aren't as many coming from places that like you said, the more traditional media outlets. I mean, the thing is, when people refer to the more traditional media outlets, I mean, does that include Forbes? Because it's not like we stopped writing about Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, even when it was in the doldrums, and we still wrote about it.
Well, I mean, I entered into the blockchain space early 2018, so I wasn't here for it. So I was just kind of interested in your perspective as far as what I hear people saying who have been around longer, that this is different for some reason.
Yes, no, you're 100% right. I do think that this is different. I think that this might be a more rational rally, if you will, less driven by enthusiasm and less driven by, like, honestly, kind of like over the top enthusiasm. I mean, to the point where we had this like ridiculous ICO craze in 2017 where people were like, okay, you've got a website and a white paper. therefore I'll give you money. And it was a bit much.
Yeah, and that was kind of the birth of MouseBelt and everything that we're doing now here with Reimagine, which was seeing a lot of money getting raised and not a lot of code being built. And we're, hackers at heart and want to see real world use cases getting into people's hands. So we wanted to create an investment model where we invest not only cash, but our engineering hours as well. So we have our MouseBelt engineering. Just a little extra plug for MouseBelt. Yeah, we want to invest both capital and resources to really see these projects get to the next level. As far as like a finance guy and someone who's writing about financial markets, are there any use cases that you're particularly excited about when it comes to blockchain outside of, digital gold or Bitcoin or a store of value or digital cash?
Okay. Let's see, where should I begin?
Or not.
No,
or that's the only use case we should focus on.
I'm just trying to think of where I should begin. I actually spoke on a panel in Las Vegas late last year. They asked us about different potential uses of blockchain. I mean, aside from just digital currencies, one of the biggest things that came up was the supply chain with food. Like if you have something that's very perishable, like if you have, say, like, fish or something, and if you have a blockchain, you can say, okay, so we got it out of the ocean here, and then we did this here, and then it got on a truck, and every single step of the way. And then you can have like a sensor like in the truck to make sure that the temperature is at the right level, so nothing happens to the fish. And that way you can help isolate things that could potentially cause, food poisoning. So, I mean, that was one major application. I mean, honestly, I think that there's probably a lot of applications. And I mean, for example, blockchains, I mean, a blockchain is something where you can, record information, and it's both immutable and it's also decentralized, or at least that's the way, the blockchain was created originally. When the first blockchain was rolled out with Bitcoin, it was supposed to create records that were both immutable and were also stored on many different computers. So you can't just, once the information is there, it's there, and all these different people have the information so they can all verify it. And I feel like that is great. It helps provide transparency, and this is type of information that can be incredibly valuable at a time when there's widespread distrust in societal institutions. Yeah.
Well, as a journalist, I imagine that you might be, I remember one of the first projects that I really started following in blockchain was Civil Token. Because for me, any use case of blockchain that I get most excited about is anything that is about censorship resistance, ensuring incentivization or payment for people's written work, right? Being able to track Progeny and make sure that you're getting credit for it and that you're getting paid for it, owning your own data, and freedom of speech, preserving freedom of speech. So unfortunately, that project didn't pan out, but those are, as a journalist, I don't know if you followed that project at all or were interested in those kinds of use cases as well.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely have heard of Civil. I mean, it absolutely sounds familiar. I just don't remember following it particularly closely necessarily.
Yeah, and then as an educator, and someone who like creates, learning experiences like these training modules, I also get excited about the potential to like tokenize learning experiences and really be able to prove different kinds of experiences as things that prove experience, or being able to verify to an employer that, like, yes, I had this learning experience, or I demonstrated this skill in some way, and that's a badge or a token that I own forever, and I can always prove that I've learned these things.
Okay, so it's kind of like verifiable credentials.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that actually sounds like it could be, that sounds great. I actually, I live in Boston. I live very close to Harvard Stadium, and I've definitely heard some very interesting stories around here. Now, stuff like there was actually a person I remember reading about who basically defrauded his way into Harvard. He said he had perfect SAT scores and a 4.0 GPA, and then he got in. And then I think he like submitted results saying he won 2 writing contests or something, and they eventually caught him. And like, I mean, obviously they rescinded his offer, but I think they charged him with crimes. I don't.
Oh.
Well, I mean, it's fraud, right? I mean, I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly all. I can't remember all the details, but I'm saying this is the sort of thing that we can avoid.
Yeah. I'm also, I also just want to, revolutionize the gatekeeping of these like educational institutions that are putting people in insane amount of debt. So like kind of like the pirate, like I'm gonna get into Harvard anyway. If he had been able to get the good grades, and I would have said more power to you to get past that initial, But of course, yeah, the whole idea is to be able to prevent fraud, and that's what these like educational certifications or degrees on the blockchain kind of companies are trying to do, because if not such a problem in the US, in other countries, false certificates and fake either degrees from fake universities or fake degrees from real universities is a big problem, uh, especially outside of the US.
Degree chain, that's what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been great. I hope that the students tuning in got some good insight into what it's like to be a financial writer, or could be inspired to just get started today, building their portfolio, taking what they're good at and continuing to hone those skills and applying it to the blockchain space. As well as what we're kind of seeing in this current bull run and what you're doing at Quantum Economics and Forbes. To wrap up, and in line with our holiday theme, just wanted to ask you, what's something that brought you joy this year?
Okay. Well, let me see. So if I want to avoid all political and or sensitive topics in our society, I'll say that I have 2 cats, and they're great companions. They bring
Oh
me
yeah.
joy. Comfort brings me joy. Um, I don't know. Creating things brings me joy. Like I enjoy creating things. Like it's a good feeling. And not only is it a good feeling to create things, but to know that the things that I create are enjoyed by other people. I mean, I've had
Yeah.
a lot of people tell me that they like my work, or they think my work is amazing, or they think it's great, or oh, you get the idea. So, I mean, things like that, simple things like that, I mean, those are the things that I think I should be grateful for. And yes, those things bring me joy, and those things can bring people joy, no matter what the circumstances are, whether you are, having to deal with quarantine and lockdown, or, no matter what society looks like when you step outside your door.
Yeah, I think pets are a huge thing that have brought a lot of people joy when they couldn't see anybody else but their pets and quarantine. I have 4 rats.
Yeah.
They would not get along with your cats, but they are, a lot of people call them little dogs. They're basically little dogs. They're super smart, and they're a little active because they're prey animals, so they're just like kind of all over the place. But when they relax, they do like to cuddle. So yeah, my pets have brought me a lot of joy, and absolutely continuing to create in any way you can, to try to put some value out into the world. And we really hope that this Reimagine 2020 virtual conference series has been able to provide that for people. We meet weekly with our students through MouseBelt University. Any students tuning in who want to, create things, we want to connect people to different protocols, start building projects, get an idea for a business, learn something. We meet weekly, invite them to come talk about their projects, and people like yourself. So thank you so much for coming on and providing some value, to the blockchain space by sharing your experience, and especially helping inspire students who might be writers to think about how they could enter into the blockchain space as well. So from everyone over at Reimagine 2020, we want to say happy HODL days, and thank you again so much, Charles, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.